Welcome back, everybody. For today's video, we are going to be talking about Blue Mage. Blue Mage spells specifically. Earlier today, we finished the carnival. I got all of my spells finished, and we're going to do a little showcase on every spell as of patch 5.45. There's 104 total, and we're going to do a little glimpse at every spell, what they do, and where you can get them. Now, I'm doing this live on Twitch. So shout out to Twitch chat, because if I wasn't doing it there, I would not be able to do this at all. So shout out to you guys. If you are enjoying the content, or maybe you're new to the channel, make sure to stop by the Twitch channel. You can find me there on most mornings. And let's get to it. Spell number 1 is Water Cannon. The spell deals water damage with a potency of 200 and is the very first spell you learn as Blue Mage. Spell number 2 is Flamethrower. The spell deals fire damage to all enemies in a cone before you with a potency of 220 for the first enemy and 50% less for all enemies remaining. You can learn this from the God Machine in Brayflock's Lawnstop hard mode, from Einhinder and Keeper of the Lake, and from Omega in FFXIV normal. Spell number 3 is Aqua Breath. The spell deals water damage to all enemies in a cone before you with a potency of 140 to the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It has an additional effect and inflicts dropsy, dealing water damage over time. You can learn this spell with Ultros in the Dragon's Neck or through Leviathan in the Hole Eater normal. Spell number 4 is Flying Frenzy. The spell delivers a jumping physical attack to target and all enemies nearby it with a potency of 150 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. You can learn this spell from the Zoo in Pharaoh Sirius normal. Spell number 5 is Drill Cannons. The spell deals physical damage to all enemies in a straight line before you with a potency of 200 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. As an additional effect, its potency is increased to 600 when the target is inflicted with petrification. You can learn this spell from the Magitech Vanguard H2 up in Northern Thanalan. Spell number 6 is High Voltage. The spell deals lightning damage to all nearby enemies with a potency of 180 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. Additional effects includes paralysis, and its potency is increased to 220 when the target is inflicted with dropsy. The duration of paralysis is increased to 30 seconds when the target is also afflicted with dropsy. You can learn this from the ADS in the Binding Coil of Bahamut T1 or the Bestial Node in the Mass Carnival number 15. Spell number 7 is Loom. The spell allows you to move quickly to any specified location. You can get it from Balsavan in the Lost City of Amdapor normal, Dandelion in the Tamtara Deepcraft hard mode, and the Flame Sergeant Dalvag, aka the B rank, in Northern Thanalan. Spell number 8 is Final Sting. The spell deals physical damage with a potency of 2000 while incapacitating self. Additional effect, it inflicts Brushwood Death on self. You can learn the spell from the Killer West in Middle Lenosha. Spell number 9 is Song of Torment. This deals unexpected damage with a potency of 50 and an additional effect of unexpected damage over time. You can learn this spell from the Siren in Pharaoh Sirius normal mode. Spell number 10 is Glower. The spell deals lightning damage to all enemies in a straight line before you with a potency of 220 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. Additional effect includes paralysis. You can get this spell from the coin counter in the Ormvale normal mode. Number 11 is Planecracker. The spell deals earth damage to all nearby enemies with a potency of 220 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. You can learn this spell from the Basalt Golem in Outer Lenosha and the Sandstone Golem in Southern Thanalan. Number 12 is Bristle. The spell increases the potency of the next spell cast by 50%. You can learn this spell from the Wild Boar in the East Shroud. Number 13 is White Wind. The spell restores your own HP and the HP of all nearby party members by an amount equal to your current HP. The spell is rewarded to you after learning 10 spells. Number 14 is level 5 Petrify. The spell petrifies all enemies in a cone before you. You can learn this spell from the Manor Sentry in Hawk Manor normal mode. Number 15 is Sharpened Knife. The spell deals physical damage with a potency of 220. It has an additional effect of its potency is increased to 450 when target is stunned. The spell could be learned from the Tonberry King in the Wanderer's Palace normal mode. Number 16 is Ice Spikes. The spell counters enemies with ice damage every time you suffer physical damage. It has an additional effect with 50% chance that when you are struck, the striker will be afflicted with slow. The spell is learned from the Trickster Imp in Central Shroud. Number 17 is Blood Drain. The spell deals unexpected damage with a potency of 50 and has an additional effect of restoring MP. You can learn this spell from the Cave Bat in Lower Lenosha. Number 18 is Acorn Bomb. The spell puts targets and all enemies nearby it to sleep. You can learn this spell from the Treant Sapling in the North Shroud. Number 19 is Bomb Toss. The spell deals fire damage at a designated location with a potency of 200 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It has an additional effect of stun and can be learned from the Goblin Fisher or the Goblin Gambler in Middle Lenosha. Number 20 is Off Guard. The spell increases target's damage taken by 5% and is rewarded to you after learning 5 spells. Number 21 is Self-Destruct. The spell deals fire damage with a potency of 1500 to all nearby enemies while incapacitating self. It has an additional effect with potency is increased to 1800 when you are under the effect of Toad Oil. It also has an additional effect. It inflicts Brushwood Death on self. You can learn this spell from the Glide Bomb in Western Thanalan. Number 22 is Transfusion. The spell restores all HP and MP of a single party member while incapacitating self. It also has an additional effect, inflicting Brushwood Death on yourself. This spell is rewarded to you after learning 20 spells. Number 23 is Phase. The spell stuns all enemies in a cone before you. It can be learned from the Keycurn Shell Sweeper in Central Thanalan. Number 24 is Flying Sardine. The spell deals physical damage with a potency of 10 and has an additional effect by interrupting your target. You can learn this spell from the Afkalu in Eastern Lenosha. Number 25 is Snort. The spell deals a 20 Yalm knockback to all enemies in a cone before you. It can be learned from Typhon in the Dragon's Neck or Typhon in the Masked Carnival. Number 26 is 4 tons weight. The spell drops a 4 tons weight dealing physical damage at a designated location with a potency of 200 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It also has an additional effect granting heavy 40%. You can learn this spell from Ultros in the Dragon's Neck. Number 27 is The Look. The spell deals unexpected damage to all enemies in a cone before you with a potency of 220 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It also has an additional effect of increased enmity. You can learn this spell from the Anantaboga in Amdapor Keep Normal or the Bibliolater in the Great Google Library hard mode. Number 28 is Bad Breath. This spell can blow noxious breath on all enemies in a cone before you, inflicting slow, heavy, blind, and paralysis. Additional effects include poison, damage dealt reduced by 10%, and can interrupt the target. You can learn this spell from the Stroper in Central Shroud or Morble in Mordona. Number 29 is Diamondback. The spell reduces damage taken by 90% and nullifies most knockback and draw-in effects. You can learn this spell from the Kukafera in the Stone Vigil hard mode and the Horde Armored Dragon in the Steps of Faith. Number 30 is Mighty Guard. The spell reduces damage taken by 40% while reducing damage dealt by 40%, increasing enmity generation and preventing casting interruptions via damage taken. The spell is rewarded to you after learning 10 spells. Number 31 is Sticky Tongue. The spell draws target towards the caster and has additional effects with a stun and increased enmity. The spell can be learned from the Toxic Toad in Central Thanalan or the Laughing Toad in Western Thanalan. Number 32 is Toad Oil. The spell increases evasion by 20% and can be learned from the Giggling Gigantoad in Western Thanalan. Number 33 is the Ram's Voice. The spell deals ice damage to all nearby enemies with a potency of 220 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It also has an additional effect of Deep Freeze. You learn this spell from the Chimera in Cutter's Cry Normal, the Dorm Chimera in A Relic Reborn, the Chimera, and the Azul Magia in the Mass Carnival number 25. Number 34 is the Dragon's Voice. The spell deals lightning damage to all nearby enemies with a potency of 200 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It also has additional effects of paralysis, and its potency is increased to 400 against most enemies afflicted with Deep Freeze. The Deep Freeze effect is also removed. You can learn the spell from the Chimera in Cutter's Cry Normal, the Dorm Chimera in A Relic Reborn, the Chimera, and from Azul Magia in the Mass Carnival number 25. Number 35 is Missile. The spell deals damage equal to 50% of the target's HP. Chance of successful attack is low, has no effect on enemies whose level is higher than your own. You can learn this from Enkidu in Battle of the Big Keep. Number 36 is the Thousand Needles. The spell deals a fixed 1000 points of physical damage which is shared by all enemies around you. The spell can be learned from the Sabatender Baylor in the Southern Thanalan. Number 37 is Inkjet. The spell deals unexpected damage to all enemies in a cone before you with a potency of 200 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It has an additional effect of blind and can be learned from the Kraken in Sestasha hard mode. Number 38 is Fire Angon. The spell deals physical fire damage to target and all enemies nearby it with a potency of 200 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. You learn this spell from the Fruimonious Kohio Ja in the Wanderer's Palace hard mode. Number 39 is Moonflute. The spell grants the effect of Waxing Nocturne, increasing damage dealt by 50% and movement speed by 30%. This spell is rewarded to you when you complete 10 stages in the Mass Carnival. Number 40 is Tailscrew. The spell reduces target's HP to a single digit and can be learned from Karlabos in Sestasha hard mode or the Cragclaw in the Peaks. Number 41 is Mind Blast. The spell deals unexpected damage to all nearby enemies with a potency of 200 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It also has an additional effect of paralysis and could be learned from the Galvanth the Dominator in the Tamtara Deepcroft normal. Number 42 is Doom. The spell inflicts doom on your target and can be rewarded after completing 20 stages in the Mass Carnival. Number 43 is Peculiar Light. The spell increases magic damage taken by all nearby enemies by 5%. You can learn this spell from the Lentic Mud Puppy in Mordona. Number 44 is Feather Rain. The spell deals wind damage with a potency of 220 to all enemies at a designated location and has an additional effect of wind damage over time. The spell can be learned from Garuda in the Howling Eye Extreme. Number 45 is Eruption. The spell deals fire damage with a potency of 300 to all enemies at a designated location. The spell could be learned from Ifrit in the Bowl of Embers normal. Number 46 is Mountain Buster. The spell deals physical earth damage to all enemies in a cone before you with a potency of 400 to the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. You can learn this from Titan in the Naval hard mode. Number 47 is Shock Strike. The spell deals lightning damage to target and all enemies nearby it with a potency of 400 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. You learn this from Ramu in the Striking Tree hard mode. Number 48 is Glass Dance. The spell deals ice damage to all enemies in a wide arc to your fore and flanks with a potency of 350 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. The spell is learned from Shiva in the Akafa Amphitheater Extreme mode. Number 49 is Veil of the Horror. The spell counters enemies with water damage every time you suffer damage. You can learn this spell from Leviathan in the Whole Leader hard mode. Number 15 is Alpine Draft. The spell deals wind damage to all enemies in a straight line before you with a potency of 220 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. The spell can be learned from Griffin in the Sea of Clouds. Number 51 is Protean Wave. The spell deals water damage to all enemies in a cone before you with a potency of 220 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It also has an additional effect of a 15 Yalm knockback. You can learn this spell from Living Liquid in Alexander Arm of the Father or Shikigami in the Mass Carnival number 29. Number 52 is Northerlies. The spell deals ice damage to all enemies in a cone before you with a potency of 220 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It also has an additional effect, enemies affected by dropsy or frozen. You can learn the spell from the Slate Yeti in Kawertha's Western Highlands. Number 53 is Electrogenesis. The spell deals lightning damage to target and all enemies nearby it with a potency of 220 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. You can learn this spell from Conodonts in the Sea of Clouds. Number 54 is Kaltstraw. The spell deals physical damage to all enemies in a cone before you with a potency of 220 for the first enemy and 50% less for all the remaining enemies. You learn this spell from Faust in Alexander the Fist of the Father or the Jagged Doll from Alexander the Cuff of the Father. Number 55 is Abyssal Transfixion. The spell deals physical damage with a potency of 220 with an additional effect of paralysis. The spell can be learned from Ash in Hawk Manor hard mode or from the Biblioclept in the Great Google Library. Number 56 is Chirp. The spell puts all nearby enemies to sleep and can be learned from the Paisa in the Sea of Clouds. Number 57 is Eerie Soundwave. The spell removes one beneficial effect from all nearby enemies and can be learned from Enkidu in the Battle of the Big Keep, Ariok in the Lost City of Amdapor Normal, or Empus in Az's Law. Number 58 is Palm Cure. The spell restores target's HP by 100 and has a potency increase to 500 if you're under the effect of Ethereal Mimicry Healer. You learn this spell from Furryfoot Copley Kip in Thornmarch Harm Road. Number 59 is Gobskin. The spell creates a barrier around self and all nearby party members that absorbs damage equivalent to a heal of 100 potency. The barrier strength is increased to absorb damage equivalent to a heal of 250 potency when you're under the effect of the Ethereal Mimicry Healer. You learn this spell from the Alexandrian Hider in Alexander Breath of the Creator, and Slipnik's Steel Joints, the A-Rank Hunt in the Dravanian Hinterlands. Number 60 is the Magic Hammer. The spell deals unexpected damage to target and all nearby enemies with a potency of 250 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It also has an additional effect, lowering intelligence and mind attributes by 10%, as well as restores 10% of maximum MP. You can learn the spell from the Apanda in the Great Google Library hard mode, or Epilogy in the Mass Carnival number 24. Number 61 is a Veil. This spell directs damage intended for you to another player. You can learn this spell from the Queen Hawk in St. Mocion's Arboretum Normal. Number 62 is Frog Legs. The spell provokes nearby enemies, placing yourself at the top of the enmity list. You can learn this spell from Parago in the Dravanian Hinterlands. Number 63 is Sonic Boom. The spell deals wind damage with a potency of 210 and can be learned from the Anzu in the Sea of Clouds. Number 64 is Whistle. The spell increases the potency of the next physical damage spell cast by 80%. You can learn this spell from the Dalmel in the Sea of Clouds. Number 65 is White Knight's Tour. The spell deals unexpected damage to all enemies in a straight line before you with a potency of 200 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It also has an additional effect. Its potency is increased to 400 when enemies are bound, as well as a 20% slow. You can learn this spell from the White Knight in the Vault. Number 66 is Black Knight's Tour. The spell deals unexpected damage to all enemies in a straight line before you with a potency of 200 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It also has an additional effect. Potency is increased to 400 when enemies are under the effect of slow, as well as an additional effect of bind. You can learn this spell from the Black Knight in the vault. Number 67 is level 5 Death. This spell KOs all nearby enemies and can be learned from page 64 in the Great Google Library normal. Number 68 is Launcher. The spell delivers an attack to all nearby enemies, randomly dealing 50%, 30%, 20%, or 10% of their HP. You can learn this spell from the Armored Weapon in Baelsar's Wall. Number 69 is Perpetual Ray. The spell deals unexpected damage with a potency of 220 with an additional effect of stun. You can learn this spell from the Manipulator in Alexander, the Burden of the Father. Number 70 is Catguard. The spell reduces target party members' damage taken by 5%, and it can be learned from the Sabotender Guardia in the Sunken Temple of Karn hard mode. Number 71 is Revenge Blast. The spell deals physical damage with a potency of 50, and potency is increased to 500 when your HP is below 20%. The spell is rewarded to you after you learn 50 spells. Number 72 is Angel Whisper. The spell resurrects targets to a weakened state. This spell is rewarded to you when you complete 30 stages at the Mass Carnival. Number 73 is Exuviation. The spell restores your own HP as well as the HP of all nearby party members. It has a cure potency of 50 and an additional effect of removing one detrimental effect from all nearby party members. The cure potency is increased to 300 when you're under the effect of Ethereal Mimicry Healer. You'll learn this spell from the Abalathian Wamura in the Sea of Clouds or the Wamura in the Lost City of Amdapor normal. Number 74 is Reflux. The spell deals lightning damage with a potency of 220 and has an additional effect of heavy. You can learn this spell from the Cloud Wyvern in the Churning Mists. Number 75 is Devour. The spell deals unexpected damage with a potency of 250 with an additional effect of increasing the maximum HP by 20%, as well as increasing the duration to 70 seconds when you're under the effect of Ethereal Mimicry Tank. You can learn the spell from Caduceus in the Binding Coil of Bahamut T1 and the Decaying Gorman in the Lost City of Amdapor normal. Number 76 is Condensed Libra. The spell afflicts the target with physical attenuation, astral attenuation, or umbral attenuation. For physical attenuation, the effect increases damage taken from physical attacks by 5%. For astral attenuation, it increases the damage taken from fire, wind, and lightning aspected attacks by 5%. And umbral attenuation increases damage taken from water, earth, and ice aspected attacks by 5%. You can learn this spell from the Arena Scribe in the Mass Carnival number 24, or the Mechano Scribe in the Great Google Library hard mode. Number 77 is Ethereal Mimicry. For this spell, you mirror the ethereal properties of your target, granting yourself a beneficial effect corresponding with the target's role. If the target is a tank, it grants you Ethereal Mimicry Tank, increasing your defense and augmenting certain blue magic spells. If your target is a DPS, you grant Ethereal Mimicry DPS, increasing critical hit rate and direct hit rate by 20%. And if the target is a healer, you grant Ethereal Mimicry Healer, increasing healing magic potency by 20% and augmenting certain blue magic spells. You'll learn this spell from Gra Luminary Ads in Pharaoh Sirius hard mode. Number 78 is Super Nakra. The spell deals earth damage to all enemies in a cone before you with a potency of 200 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It has a maximum charge of 4, and you can learn the spell from Ravana in Thok Ass Thok normal mode. Number 79 is Quasar. The spell deals unexpected damage to all nearby enemies with a potency of 300 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. You'll learn the spell from Sophia in Containment Bay P1T6. Number 80 is J-Kick. The spell delivers a jumping physical attack to the target and all enemies nearby it with a potency of 300 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. The spell can be learned from Brute Justice in Alexander, the Burden of the Sun. Number 81 is Triple Trident. The spell delivers a threefold attack, each hit with a potency of 150. You can learn this spell from Ibisu Catfish in Yangjia, or the Gyorai Quick Strike, aka the B rank in Yangjia. Number 72 is Tingle. The spell deals lightning damage to target and all nearby enemies with a potency of 100 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It also has an additional effect, increasing the potency of the next physical damage spell cast by 100. You can learn this spell from the Ibisu Catfish in Yangjia, or the Gyorai Quick Strike, aka the B rank in Yangjia. Number 83 is Tatami Gaishi. The spell deals unexpected damage to all enemies in a straight line before you with a potency of 200 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It also has an additional effect of stun. It can be learned from the Dojin Maru summoned ads in Kugane Castle. Number 84 is Cold Fog. This spell grants Cold Fog to self. It can change from Cold Fog to White Death if damage is taken. The effect of White Death deals ice damage with a potency of 400 with an additional effect of Deep Freeze. You can learn this spell from the Mist Dragon in the Burn. Number 85 is Stotrum. The spell deals unexpected damage with a potency of 140 to all nearby enemies. Action effect changes, restoring own HP and the HP of all nearby party members when you're under the effect of Ethereal Mimicry Healer. The cure potency is 300. You get the spell from Lakshmi in Emanation. Number 86 is Saintly Beam. The spell deals unexpected damage with a potency of 100 to target and all enemies nearby it. Potency increases to 500 when used against undead enemies. You learn the spell from Phantom Train in Sigmascape V1. Number 87 is Feculent Flood. The spell deals earth damage to all enemies in a straight line before you with a potency of 220 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. You learn this spell from Takapchi in St. Mosian's Arboretum Hard Mode, or the Mudman, aka the A rank in Ilmag. Number 88 is Angel Snack. The spell restores your own HP and the HP of all nearby party members. It has a cure potency of 400 and an additional effect granting healing over time when you're under the effect of Ethereal Mimicry Healer. This spell is rewarded to you when you level your Blue Mage to 70. Number 89 is Shalonian Gate. The spell summons a Shalonian Gate, reducing damage taken by 20%. It has an additional effect, granting Auspicious Trance after taking damage equal to 30% of your maximum HP. Auspicious Trance turns into Divine Cataract, dealing water damage to all nearby enemies with a potency of 500 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. Potency increases to 1000 when you're under the effect of Ethereal Mimicry Tank. You learn the spell from Genbu in Hell's Lid. Number 90 is the Rose of Destruction. The spell deals unexpected damage with a potency of 400 and has an additional effect of a 10 Yalm knockback. You learn this spell from Ivan Coralfist in the Temple of the Fist. Number 91 is Basic Instinct. The spell increases movement speed by 30% and healing magic potency and damage dealt by 100%. Also ignores the damage penalty inflicted by Mighty Guard. This can only be used in duties intended for 2 or more players while playing alone, while no other player members are in the instance, or when all player members are incapacitated. The effect ends when joined up by 1 party member or more. You learn this spell from the Master Quarrel in Upper Lenosha, or the Quarrel Shruti in Temple of the Fist. Number 92 is Ultra Vibration. The spell KOs all nearby enemies afflicted with the Deep Freeze or Petrification. Has no effect on enemies whose level is higher than your own and certain others. You can learn the spell from Kongamoto in the Peaks. Number 93 is Blaze. The spell deals ice damage to target and all enemies nearby it with a potency of 220 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. You learn this spell from Altroit in Deltascape V1. Number 94 is Mustard Bomb. The spell deals fire damage to the target and all enemies nearby it with a potency of 220 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It also has an additional effect. Enemies affected by the lightheaded suffer damage over time. You learn this spell from Omega in FFXIV. Number 95 is Dragon Force. The spell reduces damage taken by 20% and increases damage reduction to 40% when you're under the effect of Ethereal Mimicry Tank. The spell is rewarded to you after you learn 100 spells. Number 96 is Ethereal Spark. The spell deals unexpected damage with a potency of 50 to all enemies in a straight line before you. It has an additional effect of unexpected damage over time and can be learned from the Salt Druva in the Locks or Luminaire, the A rank in the Locks. Number 97 is Hydro Pole. The spell deals water damage to all nearby enemies with a potency of 220 for the first enemy and 50% less for the remaining enemies. It also has an additional effect of a draw-in. You can learn this spell from Kelpie in the drowned city of Scala. Number 98 is Malediction of Water. The spell deals water damage to all enemies in a straight line before you with a potency of 200 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It has an additional effect of a 10 Yalm knockback to all enemies and party members in range. You learn this spell from Sai Taisui in the Swallow's Compass. Number 99 is Choco Meteor. The spell deals unexpected damage to target and all nearby enemies with a potency of 200 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. Its potency increases to 300 when paired with your personal Chocobo. The spell can be learned from the Corsair Chocobo in the Dravanian Forelands. Number 100 is Mantra Magic. The spell deals an unexpected 8-fold attack, each hit with a potency of 50. Potency is increased to 100 when you're under the effect of Ethereal Mimicry DPS. The spell is rewarded to you after learning 100 spells. Number 101 is Peripheral Synthesis. The spell deals physical damage to all enemies in a straight line before you with a potency of 220 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It has an additional effect inflicting lightheaded, and potency is increased to 400 when the target is afflicted with lightheaded. The spell is learned from Omega in FFXIV. Number 102 is Both Ends. The spell deals unexpected damage with a potency of 600 to all nearby enemies and is learned from the Kidian Dashang in the Swallow's Compass. Number 103 is Phantom Flurry. The spell deals unexpected damage over time with a potency of 200 to all enemies in a cone before you. Executing Phantom Flurry again before its effect expires deals unexpected damage to all enemies in a cone before you with a potency of 600 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. The spell can be learned from Suzaku in Hell's Cure. Number 104 is Night Bloom. The spell deals unexpected damage to all nearby enemies with a potency of 400 for the first enemy and 50% less for all remaining enemies. It also has an additional effect of unexpected damage over time. The spell can be learned from Tsukiyomi in the Castrum Fluminous. Alright, and that's it. 104 spells recorded. That was quite the event this afternoon. I want to thank Twitch chat again for sticking this out with me. Shout out to Tari as well for helping me out with some of the spells that I could not use the dummy for. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. It was really fun to make, and just a quick note, there may be a couple moments of inaccuracies. I think I read a couple of the primals as normal mode as opposed to hard mode. Just to be clear, it was probably going to be a little thing here and there that might be a mistake, but otherwise, I hope this helped you. I hope you enjoyed it, whether just the visuals or maybe you learned where to find some of these spells. You know, let me know in the video or down below what some of your favorites are, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys back over on Twitch. Thanks for watching. Take care.